welcome to the show with me, Jillian Godsil. Today, I am delighted to have as my guest Clem Chambers, who promises to be a bit rude, a bit risque, a bit entertaining, and all of the above, but talking about his business career, crypto, NFTs, and everything in between. Clem, thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed by me today.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here.
So you have a pretty impressive CV. Your CV is very impressive, just in traditional terms. You know, you're a tech innovator, an entrepreneur, you've been in the software business for 37 years, especially in gaming, and you're an author, a published author, a best-selling author, I mean, and a Forbes contributor, and an early crypto advocate. So you have a huge career, traditional career. So can I ask you, first of all, and can I divide it in two and say, first of all, you have your traditional career, and then you have the crypto stuff, or maybe it's much more malleable than that. Tell me about your early career. How did you get into business? What
I'm
drove
just
you?
a horrific workaholic.
Yeah.
And I don't have a television. You know, I say to people, because often people say, you know, you've done all right. How would you change your life? And I say, get rid of your television. And they say, oh, I'd have to get rid of my wife and kids then. But, you know, people, you know, go, but if you got rid of your television, you do a lot of things because you'd have to.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have the somatic effect of staring at the goggle box, as you used to call it when I was a kid. And you get up to all these things. So, you know, that's really the secret. But
That's great.
Workaholicism, no television. Simple.
Okay. That actually makes a lot of sense, because people, and you're also involved with gaming, people, you know, give out about gamers back in the day. Now, of course, with play to earn, it's actually a career, it's a whole new thing. It's not like this image of having the single man living in the garage above his parents' house, whatever, is gone. But people used to complain about people gaming and watching, you know, for hours and hours and hours. But ordinary folk watch telly for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Well, I always used, because coming out of games, I was, I can't remember how young I was now. I like to think I was 17, but I think I was 18. And that I came from a background that didn't have higher education in any way. I mean, my father was a boy soldier in the war. I mean, you know, that's a war crime now. But back then, you could be a boy soldier as long as you're fighting Adolf. And so he was a boy soldier, so he knew, but that was his higher education, fixing tanks. And so, you know, when I didn't get into university, being faintly dyslexic, and I didn't know you could ring them up and say, oh, please, can I come and do industrial archaeology is what I wanted to do, which had a queue about 2 people long to do it. And I didn't know I could probably just rung them up and said, I did got 2 A levels and I really want to dig holes in steam engines, please. And they would have let me in. I didn't know that. So I thought, well, I better start a business like everybody does. So I went in and I started one of the first British computer game companies called CRL, and then proceeded to have 10 years of hell, starting a business with no capital.
And the hell was just lack of funding.
Yeah, and also a developing industry where everybody was going bust and trying, you know, like drowning men, drowning everybody that they could grab a hold of in the process. So it was a extremely, I mean, I still probably have PSTD from that.
And how did you survive then? What was the success to you?
With exceptional difficulty and brutal, never give up, never give in. Don't give nothing back. No, you just can't give up and you can't give in, and you just have to go through against all costs. I remember there was an Alan Bleasdale, a movie called The Muscle Market, where there was this bad guy, but he was being pursued. It was like Nemesis was pursuing him, and he just never gave up and he never gave in. And he ends up at the end of this show running away from his creditors, jumping off a bridge onto the top of a bus, and then the bus drives off with him on the roof, clinging on. And at the time, I had great empathy with that situation, because that's what it was like in the computer game industry in the 80s. And what happened was, I like to say now child, because, you know, it sounds more impressive than a young adult. And, you know, my workforce were runaways, were runaway kids. I didn't realize it at the time. You know, some 16-year-old would show up and say, oh, I can do art. Can I work for you? And I wouldn't ask any questions. I'd say, yeah, sure, come in, try out. And I ended up with a warehouse full of 16-year-olds who were living there. And at the time, I just thought that was natural, because I kind of was doing the same thing. But looking back, I go, they'd all run away from home, hadn't they?
And what they all lived
run away from home.
They all lived in the warehouse as well. They all lived on the sofas and stuff.
Well, they were. Our office which is now under the Olympic Stadium, was an old sweet factory, and about the cheapest property in the whole of London. And it was like, you know, very, very cheap for a company with no capital, no glass towers. well, they didn't have them in Docklands at that point, but no West End offices, no Mayfair, no, none of that. It was a old warehouse, and I bought a large amount of carpet for one section of it, and then that was already split up into offices for accounting for selling mints, and they lived there.
Wow.
They just lived there, and I lived there. I mean, totally lived there. I did go home every couple of days.
Change yourself.
Yeah, I didn't go around. Hold on a minute. How old are you? You're 16. Why aren't you going home? I didn't ask that. It didn't occur to me that why are you living here? It seemed obvious. You live there because it's great fun. Why would you go home? It's just great fun. You go out and you spend your wages, which were, now if you multiply it by 5 times, it was not a bad whack I was paying. And you buy your pizzas and your Kentucky Fried Chickens. You're surrounded by nerds, drinking lots of Coca-Cola, taking caffeine tablets to pull an all-night coding session.
What's happened to all those? What's happened to all those kids?
Well, they all grew up and got good jobs because they'd all had technical skills that they built up with me over 3 or 4 years. Wow. So they all came out as 19-year-old gurus. Some of them went to university. Some of them ended up working for hedge funds.
Do you meet them ever? Do you come across them?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. In general, these guys, they write about it. They write about the experience as if it was an amazing period, but they never reach out to me and say, "Hello, remember me?"
Maybe were you a mean boss?
I probably was. I wasn't mean, but I was certainly, intense. I certainly, I was setting an example.
Yeah.
By sleeping in a sleeping bag. I mean, we do stupid things like spend the whole Christmas packing boxes because we had to make a delivery or go bust. So they'd all be sat there on the floor packing boxes for Christmas Day, for 3 or 4 days over that.
It's like the image we have of the now disgraced, very much disgraced Sam Bankman-Fried when he was sleeping on the beanbags in his office. So like you were doing that. I
totally understand where he was at, and I can totally understand the road to perdition he went on. Because I mean, some of my novels are all about the vicious circle that you can get into. You make one slip. I mean, I had that. I once we used to go to this show, the CS show, computer electronic show, was the computer game show in the 80s. And you fly down on a little plane that makes you very nauseous to the rim of the Grand Canyon, and they say to you, look, when you walk down to the Grand Canyon, realize that every step down you take, it takes twice as long to make that step up. So if you walk down 15 minutes, it's going to take you half an hour to get back. If you walk down an hour, it's 2 hours. So if you walk down an hour, you ain't coming back on the plane because you will be gone, right? And that stuck with me. And I thought, yeah, when you take the wrong road, it takes you twice as long to get back. And maybe if it's a steeper road, it takes you much longer. Maybe you get to a position where you can't ever get out. There's another one. There used to be the Audi Quattro back in the 80s. And it frightened me because it could accelerate faster than it could brake, which means you could accelerate into a situation you could never get out of. And they're the 2 ideas that always stuck with me. I thought, oh dear, you take the wrong road, and you get it's harder and harder to get yourself out. Like smoking, it only takes 1 cigarette for another 6 months of hell to try to stop. But you take somebody like him takes that fork.
Yeah.
And he's a genius. Everyone's telling him he's a genius. Every step down into the abyss, everyone's telling him he's a genius. And everybody's and he's looking at his bank account and it's getting bigger and bigger. And he's a millionaire, and then he's a multimillionaire, and now he's a billionaire. And the point is, he's not hearing that voice that says, you are well and truly in trouble here, son.
Yeah.
And
that is the best explanation of how that happened that I've heard, because I mean, I know when I watched his early rise and stuff like that, and I was like fascinated, and I haven't met him, and I was all the good he wanted to do, and it's just the altruism. I was like, this is amazing, this is fantastic. And then when it blew up, I went, oh, Genie macaronis. Only I used a lot stronger words than that, and I was just disgusted with it all. But
I was expecting it. I was absolutely expecting it, and I'm expecting more of that to come.
Yeah,
and you could also say. The point is what they're going to, the Americans go, we don't like you, you're guilty of something we're going to make up. Yeah. You can be as guilty as hell, and they will get you for something you didn't do, because they just it's persecution, not prosecution in America.
The justice system is a bit weird.
And that's another whole issue.
Yeah.
But it's not to say that he's not as guilty as sin. But if you are perhaps one of the key things, if you read the newspapers, you take a newspaper and you read it and you go, why did he do that? Why did he do that? Why did he do that? Why did he, all the way through, why did she do that? Why did they do that? And the answer is drugs. Yeah, because drugs make you inadequate. And if you are a business person and you're doing this business and you're taking drugs, you are going to perish. It doesn't matter how well you do. It might, like the snooker player that plays 3 years really well and then wins all the medals. You then perish. And so you've got all these connecting factors that come together to make an incredibly toxic environment. But the point, I mean, they will say, I'm sure, look, FDX was a bank, okay? And banks, all the banks take clients' money and invest it. And we did a very bad job of that and we went bust, but that's not a crime. And they'll say, well, what about your terms and conditions? They say, well, that's a civil case. That's not a criminal case, is it?
But FTX was an exchange, not a bank, though. I think, isn't that?
No, but that's the word, isn't it?
Mm.
It was a pink elephant.
It was acting like a bank.
It was a bank. You put your money with it, and then it shuffled it about. That is what banks do, right? And there's a close link between banks and brokers. You can call yourself a broker and be a bank. TD Waterhouse is a bank that has a brokerage. Yeah, but what he did that was criminal was that he stole it. He stole the money. He also stole the money, and that you might say, "Oh, I was going to pay it back." Oh no, I didn't really mean to steal it. Oh, that was just an accounting error. But basically, he helped himself, right? And that's what he. I mean, he's going to go to jail and never come out. So he might as well shoot him. And that's another thing that's quite amazing in America that you can do a white collar crime and basically get a worse than the death sentence for it. And it's all a mess. It's all a horrible mess. And it's a very, very interesting unresolved situation on many fronts. And of course that makes it highly interesting. But that the crypto area is interesting because everybody was so fascinated by it. Somebody would stand up and talk about growing bamboo in Australia, and the first question would be, "Oh, what do you think of Bitcoin?" But Trump would stand up and say, we need to make America great again. And the first question would be, "What do you think of Bitcoin?" And for years, that's all anybody cared about out there was, "What do you think about Bitcoin?" And that is the power of that brand. But don't go jumping up and down on the feet of government and telling them they're all a bunch of idiots and that we're going to do it better, us young.
It's a bit poking the bear, all right. So
you're going to get.
If I can go back to you then. So when did you first come across crypto? You were an early advocate. How did it come into your world?
The first time I came across crypto was, I think, 2012. And I was in a cab, and this cab driver said, "Oh, have you heard about Bitcoin, mate?" And I said, "Yeah, I have heard about Bitcoin." He said, "Oh, well, I got interested in that just when it came out. And I lost interest. I did a bit of mining, and I looked at it again. It's worth 80 grand. I made 80 grand. And I thought, well, that's the end of it then, isn't it? When the cab driver's telling you you've made 80 grand in some investment, that's the end of it. Yeah. Maybe I should. That's a classic sign of the end of a run of a speculative instrument. And of course it wasn't. And then back in, I think, 15 or so, I think a year later, I've got to be careful what I say here, but this is true. And it was innocent as innocent. I went onto Silk Road because I thought, I need to go on the Silk Road and see what's going on here, because this is like a thing. An interesting thing, right or wrong. What they're doing is interesting on many levels. And what you have to remember is it was facilitated by the American Navy. People forget that. Tor was created by the American Navy. Of course. Yeah. And governments have these terrible habits of creating things with unintended consequences. So all that underweb, or whatever you want to call it, the dark net, is actually a Frankenstein of the American government. And it would not surprise me if Mr. Satoshi Nakamoto wasn't also a child of the American government. But anyway, that's another story. They have more crypto experts, more experts on encryption and security than anybody else on the planet's surface. They have many thousands of those people working for them. Yes. Anyway, be that as it may, that's just pure speculation. Without a doubt, it's a matter of fact that that Tor was created by the American Navy. So anyway, there is a not American governmental organization and with the most, it was an incredible sight. I mean, you go on there and you go, oh, holy cow, what is that? Oh, really? Oh, you can buy that.
What was the weirdest thing you saw you could buy?
Cash.
You could buy cash.
You could buy cash at a discount. It's called money laundering, right?
Of course. Yeah, sorry, that makes sense. I was thinking you were going to say, I don't know, body parts or something like that, or I don't know.
No. I mean, I don't think they did. They didn't do body parts, and they didn't do something. A couple of other things they didn't do, but I mean, I'm not. I wasn't interested in their ethics. I was interested in what they were.
Technology.
The thing, looking through the window, looking behind the green door.
Yeah.
And there was this Bitcoin, because another thing was they were selling Bitcoin, obviously cash for Bitcoin for cash. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And well, if you're a criminal anyway. So, but it was fascinating to see piles of $20 bills for sale at, I think, I don't know, 10% discount or whatever it was. And like you, I said, why would you sell cash? Fool. Yeah, because you're Colombian and you would rather like it not to be cash anymore.
Yeah.
So anyway, there was the Bitcoin. And I thought, oh, I can buy some Bitcoin on here. Well, wouldn't that be an adventure? And then I looked at it, it was $80. And I wanted to buy 1 million because that would be fun, a million for $200 or something like that. I hadn't kept track of where it was. And there it was, $80 a coin or whatever. It was just like 100. And I thought, oh, that's no fun. That's not a fun amount to pay for stuff because I was only thinking of it in fun at the time.
Yeah.
And then 16 came along and I wrote an article for Forbes actually saying this is all a bubble, this is ridiculous. And then suddenly the big Monty Python foot came out of the sky and went squish on me. And I went, oh, blooming hell. Oh, duh. I had the epiphany moment that a lot of people have with crypto.
Yeah.
And then it just, there was a big clunk in my brain and off we went because, it was just obviously something, a Kraken had been unleashed the Kraken. And there it was.
Yeah.
And of course, it still is a Kraken. Now, whether they're going to shut that stuff down, it doesn't really make a great deal of difference because what it does is it delayers middlemen, which is half its problem because quite often those middlemen are wide awake to the fact that they are just parasites.
Yeah.
And they get really upset when they're going to get made redundant. But it's interesting because actually this is all passé now because AI is way more dangerous and way more likely to reorganize a lot of people who are parasites, including the whole human race if you're not careful.
Well, Elon Musk just came out today with the signed letter, 1,000 other people saying, stop AI, which is kind of scary. But anyway, we're not going to stop AI. We're going to keep to blockchain because didn't you rename your company? You put blockchain in the title of your listed company.
Yeah, we were doing that. We're doing this blockchain stuff. And
then the share price went through the roof, I think, as well, didn't it, in about 2018?
Yes, I mean, that's a bad habit of mine. It happened in 2000 when we were called online originally, and nobody knew what an online was. You're on the line? What line are you on? And then all the smart cookies were watching it going ballistic in America, waiting for it to arrive in the UK. And then we had a little bit of a uptick for one reason or another in our share price, and everybody and their aunt piled in saying, this is the Netscape of the UK. And we went from 15p to £15. And stayed up there for quite a long time, .com boom and all that. But anyway, we were doing this blockchain stuff, and I thought, I think it's probably wrong us not telling people that we're doing blockchain. And it's all well and good putting out a press release that nobody will read. We just got to change our name to online blockchain, which is what we are and what we're doing. And
very clever.
There was a huge amount of resistance from the institutional end of things, from the elite. The elite didn't like it, and we had to really fight hard to do that. Everybody said, you can't do that. And we said, why? They said, oh, well, that's, they said, you don't like blockchain, do you? Because it puts you out of business, doesn't it? Oh, no, nothing like that. No, uncomfortable. Oh, they won't like it, So anyway, we forced it through. We actually had to change some of our advisors. And then we did it and up we went. And obviously we then just tracked Bitcoin. So up like a rocket, down like a rock. But, we've got some very nice projects and we're very, very, excited.
Tell me about, so before we go on to, I want to talk about the Rocky Horror Show, but what type of projects are you incubating in online blockchain?
Well, there's the Rocky Horror Show, which we've talked about in public, and there's Umbria, which we've also talked about in public. And Umbria is a bridge, so it's an infrastructure piece, and it enables people to take their Ethereum, for example, and take it off one chain and put it on another.
Okay.
And you know, there's a few people doing that, but we do it in a way which is pretty fast and pretty cheap.
And secure.
And it's popular. Oh, obviously secure. I mean, if you've got any weakness in your security, the North Koreans will get a heartbeat. I mean, all these things, all internet companies are attacked by hackers 24/7, 365. You know, and I was just looking at some attacks this morning and going, oh, you know, these people. I wish government would do its blooming job and round these people up, because there's only probably a couple of thousand of them, and they probably know who they are. They're just, you know, how many times do people try to rob you in a day? I mean, it must be 5 or 6 times a day, Jillian, through your email.
By email. Yeah, actually, you're right. That's dating back to those Nigerian letters, and you know,
loads of people trying to get you every day.
Yeah,
absolutely every day, right? If you walk down the street and there was 5 muggers in a day, you would try murder, and probably would be murdered, right? But these people are trying to murder you. They wouldn't just stop taking $100 off you. They take everything, right? And the government is just not doing anything about it. There's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of policemen who are out there trying to stop you breaking the speed limit by 3%. Yeah, and there's probably hundreds or dozens of policemen trying to stop these people trying to rob you 5 times a day. And that's an appalling dereliction of duty.
Well, it's true. I had my wallet drained recently.
You were robbed.
Totally. Yeah, and it's gone.
10,000 policemen in the City of London. 10,000 special City of London policemen. You could have them in a queue, standing to attention every 100 yards to north south, and they could just stand there, all 10,000 of them, right? So it's enough to fill a small football stadium, right? 10,000. How many people are stopping you from having your wallet drained, which is real money? Yeah, it's a terrible thing.
It's actually, put it like that, it actually, you have a very interesting view on things, and that actually makes a lot of sense. Why it's not been done. So tell me about the Rocky Horror Show. Let's go nice things. So do you know Richard O'Brien of old? I think, is that right?
Of old, yes. Once upon a time in a galaxy far away, when I was a child, I did the Rocky Horror Show computer game in 1984, 83, 84. And I'd done some work with the long lamented, may he rest in peace, Jerry Anderson. And I'd also done a War of the Worlds game with a musician called Jeff Wayne, who was notoriously careful with his IP, as they would say, very, very protective of it, and rightly so. And the Rocky Horror Show people knew him, and they thought anybody that can look after the War of the Worlds, Jeff Wayne, and you know, do a thing, it would be the sort of people to work with on our IP, which again is also, you know, very very wonderful. And so they actually came and said, hey, how would you like to Rocky Horror Show? And we went, to be honest with you, I didn't know it. I was 19. I mean,
okay, still a child. Okay,
I still I probably couldn't get.
You were a child for a long time.
I still am. You know, now I'm 25. But anyway, but I said, well, yeah, license, you know, fantastic, and then got into it, and well, you know, wow, this is. Well, first of all, back even today, people see the show or the movie for the first time and are in shock, because it is like, and even in this day and age, where you know, having pink hair and being a unicorn is kind of, you know, everybody's doing it. Back then, I mean, Elton John had only just come out.
Yeah.
And before that, you know, people were being pilloried for anything that wasn't heterosexual. That was the end of you. So to see this thing that was so off the dial, it's not a gay thing, you know, it's a sweet transvestite from Transylvania. It's a musical horror show. It's a musical LGBTQ++ musical. 2 generations before people understood what that was. So, you know, it's a big eye opener for a lot of people, and it sets so to speak, the stage for a lot of things that were to come. So, I was bowled over by it because it was so out there, which is the whole point. It is an amazing piece out of the blue, lightning bolt out of the blue, particularly back then in 73. I mean, now it still, packs a huge punch in terms of wow. But 1973,
it's true. I think I saw it in the 80s. I think I went there on a date to the local cinema, and of course everyone was dressed up. It was just the most amazing experience. Maybe I was about 16 or 17 or something, but everybody was all dressed up and they were throwing the rice and throwing the water and shouting.
And you were what they call a virgin. And the virgin at the Rocky Horror Show is not going to be someone going, oh yeah, it's going to be someone going, what is going on here? What are these people doing? Oh my goodness, they're throwing water. Oh no, what? Help me! Oh,
it was an amazing. I was like blown away by it. And think about all the films and shows you might see over the years, and you can't remember the half of them. And this is and I've seen it on TV and I've seen different things since, but it was just an amazing production. So what's happened?
Really nothing. There's been very little like it since. I mean, very little, and nothing that's actually got the full deck, so to speak. That show.
Well, it has everything. It ticks music, plot, just fun. It's just language, script.
I mean, I've got a musical string to my bow, and it's the music is just fabulous. I mean. I always hear Frankenfurter, and I've never asked Richard this, but I've got a suspicion, it came to me about 5 years ago, that Frankenfurter is actually Elvis. Because if you sing Frankenfurter songs with an Elvis voice, it's very like an Elvis song. Ooh. Or Elvis songs,
I'll go back.
Transvestite, you just hear Elvis in them. But anyway, it's got everything. The songs are just off the dial.
Yeah. So tell me about the NFTs that you're doing. Are you in the middle of doing it? Have you launched it?
We're aiming at the 50th anniversary for the launch. And I was just, as you do, you were sort of drifting through the ether, and you go, why am I doing an NFT Rocky Horror? I mean, what was I thinking in the last 3 years? So I just rang up my old friends and just said, you should do an NFT. And they went, well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's great. And we get, as long as we can give some money to charity. So, and blah, 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 blah. And so, we're working towards that. But the way that we see it, and an NFT, people think NFT is about art. And it can be, and it is, it has been, and probably will be. But what NFTs really are keys. You've got an NFT, it's a key. So you go, hey, here's my NFT. Let me in, Dorman. Oh, you've got one of them, have you? Come in. So it's a key. So you could go to a website and it looks at your wallet and says, oh, you've got one of them, you can come in now. So one of the use cases for NFTs is that it can act as a key. And that therefore then opens up the opportunity for it to act as a key to other Rocky Horror Show things, and depending on how it all goes. And ideally, where we will be tacking towards is a inverted commas metaverse, because metaverses are just online environments. And I was one of the pioneers of that back in the very late 80s and early 90s. Did some of the very, 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 very first metaverses. They weren't called metaverses in those days, they're called massively multiplayer games. And if you take it out of the game, it's a massively multi-user chat. But ultimately, if you are on a digital device in a simulation with other people, that is a metaverse. And that's what everyone's talking about. Of course, there's other layers and wonderful things you can do with Web 3.0, a huge amount of things to do. And now the government's scared of everything new because they realise that they're running a political system that was developed for horses and trains. Metaverse is probably also in their scope because they're putting everybody in such a pressure cooker that people are leaving, and you can't leave your country very easily, but you can certainly go to the metaverse. I mean, when you think in America, 40% of the people don't pay income tax, they've already gone effectively. But they've got nowhere to go to. Well, they have gone. They've gone to television, and they've gone to online and gone to the web. And they live below the radar of income, and they aren't often, many of them are not employed. And that's because government puts you under such a pressure cooker, people give up.
Mm.
And the metaverse, of course, a lot of people will go to the metaverse. I mean, I recommend people who haven't really thought much about the metaverse to look at Ready Player One, which is Spielberg's take on the book. And of course, it's a Hollywood version. But you see there are people that live in the metaverse and don't live in the real world. Well, or rather, their choice of place is the metaverse rather than the real world.
My business partner, myself, we launched on Paddy's Day last week the first Irish pub in the metaverse, in the Sandbox. We're having fun with that. It's only just started. It's literally because the Sandbox is in beta anyway. So it starts off. It's only single player currently, but we have so many plans for our Irish pub. I'm going to have an Irish pub in every metaverse too. We want to do that. Absolutely,
and that is it's all coming back round again, because there's a second life, and the Sandbox is a Web3 of a second life, and a lot of stuff that was going on in AOL and CompuServe back in the late 80s and early 90s. But the tip of the spear of people that were using that were a long time ago, because the mainstream takes a long time, a generation to show up, and now that the mainstream is starting to show up at the call it the metaverse, and that in a way is very exciting. And it's a big move. It's a big change. People wonder why aliens aren't visiting Earth, and well, maybe they just didn't want to go on in the universe. It just went into a metaverse, and they're much more fun, right?
Yeah.
And, there is that people are now living in a digital world, and that digital world there's an interface between it and our world. And if you don't sort out your society, people are gonna leave and go to the metaverse. I mean, I did that in the early 90s when I was doing the multiplayer games. I would spend where I lived, where my business was, where my focus was not in on planet Earth. It was in space, in the space game that I was running
with the Runaways.
It's a real thing, and it's coming. And then when you get money in there, or you get an economy in there, because your needs in the real world start to shrink. Because if you could just have sit in your basement, and there you are with enough money to have your pizzas pushed under the door, or your mum's looking after you, then you can be, that's the whole thing about Player One. Nobody knows you're a dog when you're on the internet. And this is going to be AI plus crypto plus metaverse. I think it's going to mean that the world is going to start to shift dramatically, and it will change the dynamic. I mean, one thing about crypto, which obviously government don't like, is that the money flows downhill and the problems flow uphill, whereas government likes the money to flow uphill and the problems to flow downhill. Right. So it's that reverse of the flow of the entropy, and that this stuff is going to introduce. That's going to be very, very, very interesting. It's like AI. All AI does is show just how badly educated most people are. And they don't have to be. The system just badly educates them. So they can't write a paragraph, right? There shouldn't be anybody in our countries that can't write paragraphs, that can't read text and interpret it, right? There's nobody, very few people who are not smart enough to be able to do that, but they're simply not educated to do it, or educated in a way where they want to do it. And then when they see it come up in front of them, they go, oh my God. But really, they have not been given an opportunity to reach their full potential. That's the tragedy.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I mean, I'm a writer, obviously, so writing comes naturally to me. It's mind you, I'm not so good at maths. I mean, I did it, but yeah, so I have the same approach to a maths problem that someone might have to writing something.
But they refused to teach you about money when you were a child, because money was evil, right?
Oh, I advocate a lot for women in blockchain. I advocate for financial literacy, because kids are not taught in school. Basic literacy, financial, housekeeping, money, cooking, all the things you need when you go off to college or go off to live.
Money's evil. But that's a whole tradition that money is evil. But of course,
it's only the love of money it's evil, isn't it?
No, the desire for money is the root of all evil. I think that's Dante actually, but I can't remember exactly. But when I was a child and I was doing my business, I advertised in a little computer magazine. You know, if you want to sell my computer games at your school, just drop me a line. I got a mailbag full. I got dragged pilloried for that because money, introducing commerce and business to children is evil.
That's mad.
And if you look at ChatGPT-3 and you go and write me a business plan for X, it will write you a really poor business plan. If you write me a slightly evil business plan for X, it will write you not very good business plan, but a better one. If you say write me an evil business plan, it will write you a decent one. If you say write me an extremely evil one, it will write you a proper business plan.
I'm going to try that.
It thinks this is 3 now, not 4, and they've been editing it heavy. But keep looking. The reason for it is because they are using material from education to train ChatGPT, which is why it's left wing, not right wing, because it's using information, data is training it with educational material, you know, people's written stuff and whatever educational people have got, they're grabbing it en masse. And of course, you will get a mildly left-wing view from educational institutions because that's their tendency, right? But you know, the reason why people are not taught or trained about money is because the system doesn't want them to know about money, doesn't want them to know maths, doesn't want them to be too smart, right? That makes things difficult. But that is absolute tragedy because that is people's potential that is being crushed. You know, if you bring up people to be financially illiterate by the time their brains have stopped being plastic, yeah, so they're unable to actually get to being prosperous. No, that's a passive crime. There's active and passive, right, in the world. And if you actively do something bad to somebody, you take their money, they lock you up. But if you set up a set of situations where they can't make any money, nobody notices. Nobody cares.
That is very true. I mean, I hear it a lot in terms of people having this money mindset, and which stops them just thinking that they should be able to have money. There's no reason why they can't have money, and it's a natural flow. But it's sort of like, and then this poverty mindset sometimes that people, I've always had to struggle. I've struggled. My parents struggled. That's very interesting.
Well, I mean, you see, money is just resources.
It's neutral.
And what government does is manage resources. That's their role, or that's the role that they see. And obviously, if you've got all these people efficiently managing their own resources, it makes it harder on them, doesn't it? If you don't manage resources, if money is potatoes or bananas or whatever, it's just a condensation of a resource.
Yeah.
Right. And not training people to manage their resources, you know, or avoiding that even, that's awful. That's awful. Makes it easier for me, of course, because, you know, I haven't got so much competition. But I mean, it's not what's good for me, it's what's good for everybody that's really good for me.
I've got 2 questions to ask you now, 2 final ones. The first one is, I mean, and the conversation is lovely. It's gone in lots of directions which I didn't expect, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. But if you were to give advice to young folk, the runaways that used to live in your warehouse, about crypto in particular, what advice would you give them?
Well, these days, I would sound like somebody out of the X-Files, and I would say, don't believe anybody. Question everything. The level of lying that's going on in this current society is pestilential. I mean, it's always been out there, but now it's like everybody's furiously lying and lying upon lies. And you know, the film industry would multiply by 5. Now they're multiplying by 20. Their numbers. You know, it's like the level of a lot of people being lured down the wrong path by being shown mirages, like, oh, be a YouTube influencer because you'll make millions. And the people they're looking at that are making millions are just faking everything they're doing, and they haven't got those subscribers. They're not real. The views aren't real, and the income, they're not getting the income. And this level of fakery is something that you can only challenge by not believing anybody, and by triple, quadruple fact checking everything you say. And if you start fact checking everything and being very, very hard on, you know, being Columbo on everything, then you'll be in good shape. Yeah, because there's a lot vast amount of opportunity out there, but don't believe anything that anybody tells you, including me.
Okay.
Check it, double check it, check it.
Okay.
Triple check it. And this is why you need numeracy for a start, right?
Mm.
I mean, you go on YouTube, you go, oh, that guy's got 1 million viewers. How long's he been going for? Oh, he's been going for 3 months. Where did he get 1 million subscribers from? So that should mean he should have this many. If I look at these guys that I know are relatively credible, he should have that many views. Oh, he hasn't, or she hasn't, etc., etc., etc. So then you don't get influenced by that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Now, there's a real problem out there. The biggest problem that I see is that there's, viewers probably never, a lot of them won't have heard of it. There's this problem that young people are having with dopamine. Now, dopamine is a brain chemical.
Yeah.
And
it's the red ticks and the likes and.
Yeah, it's chocolate. Dopamine is chocolate.
Yeah.
All this social media started out by giving you like a dopamine hit every 5 minutes. Right. And then people go, well, actually, people are here for the dopamine. In fact, we did it on purpose. 1 dopamine hit every 10 minutes, good for business. So someone said, we'll do it 1 every 5 minutes. And then, we'll do it once every 2 minutes. Oh, TikTok, once every 30 seconds. Dopamine. Now, what that does is it raises your need and level of dopamine that your brain needs just to be normal.
Yeah, it's the drugs.
You get it, you go into dopamine withdrawal. When you hear about all these children that are depressed and having panic attacks, that's dopamine withdrawal. And that's because their need for dopamine is being boosted so high that they need a constant supply of dopamine way above normality. That as soon as they stop, they go into withdrawal and they get dopamine insufficiency symptoms, which are depression, panic attacks, lack of self, this and that. You can look it up on the internet.
So would you say also to young people, turn off your social media, put your phone down?
I would say that realize what you're getting from this social media. And what you're getting is a very powerful brain drug called dopamine. And you'll be like a dopamine alcoholic or a heavy smoker that can't stop. You'll be hooked on this dopamine delivery device. And as soon as you stop, you'll start to panic and you'll go into depression. Well, when you do, you'll know why. Because you've come off the drip of dopamine that you're getting from TikTok, or you're getting from, well, TikTok in particular, these shorts, they're the real, really, or some game, Farmville, whatever. I know this because I'm a naturally dopamine addictive person for things like Farmville, which is why I thought, hold on a minute, why are these people getting panic? Always used to be panic attacks, right? And now all the young people are getting, well, why is that? Dopamine, lack of dopamine withdrawals will give you panic attacks. And then you go, oh, God, yeah. You see these kids and you go, what? You're doing this Facebook all day and all night, and you're doing this TikTok all day and all night. Oh, it's not natural. I'm old now. Oh, no, don't do that. That's bad for you. But then when you go, well, they're getting dopamine and their level or their need for dopamine goes up, just in the same way as an alcoholic who drinks, half a bottle of whiskey every day. You need to drink more and more and more to get the same, right? Yeah. Well, the moment you stop, your level, your requirement to get straight goes up and up and up and up. With any drug, right? And the moment you stop, you go into withdrawal. And this is what these kids are getting from dopamine, because these devices are designed to give you dopamine. That's what they're about. They're hooking you with dopamine. And on top of that, it's not by accident.
No.
And there's a dark side to computer gaming and design, which is the psychological manipulation of the individual for their purposes of traffic, which is totally evil. But it all boils down to dopamine. And if you get to a state where you need huge amounts of dopamine to be normal, when you get off it, you get all those symptoms that all these poor children are reporting of depression, anxiety, panic attacks. And you can
do you know what's interesting? You're saying that dopamine is to drive traffic, and that's why they're doing it. It's not to make people feel happy. It's the traffic. I think possibly it's another day, another conversation. There's a thing with Web3, with the interaction, taking out the middlemen. Traffic becomes less important. So if you like, again, the idea that Kevin Kelly from Wired, whatever, said, I need 1,000 true fans, and you can sustain yourself as an artist. So you don't need the traffic. You just need the 1,000 people to keep you going. So I think that there might be something coming up too.
This is the long tail lie. Yeah, because you won't get 1,000 fans because they control the audience and they're rationing you.
But could you not with Web3? Do you not think with Web3 we're going to plow through this, and Google will be kicked so much?
My experience is this: unfortunately, people consume what they're given and what they're sold. Yeah, and when you control the distribution channels, you control that thing. And so you can have a YouTube channel, because I know I've done all the research, and you can have people that absolutely bloody love you, absolutely adore you, and then they're just basically no one else will ever get to see you because they'll cut you off from anybody's ability to see you. So unless you somehow get out into the real world and put your banner out there and collect up the 100,000 people that it needs for the 1,000 people that really love you, there's no hope for you.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you on that one.
Yeah, sure. I've got all the stats on that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I will come back to you on that one. I'm not going to do it now because we've been talking long enough. I don't take your time. I will come back to that one. The final question I want to ask you is a biggie. What do you want on your tombstone?
Well, I think I'll go with Charlie Munger there. So all I want to know is where I'm going to die, and I'm never going to go there.
Nicely said. But
tombstones, I mean, you don't get them these days, do you?
I don't know. Plaque on the wall, perhaps.
I think they bury you, and everybody cries or whatever they do over your grave, and then they go away, and then 3 months later they dig you up and make the hole ready for someone else, some other ceremony.
Well, I suppose I think practical. But if there was a plaque on the wall, though,
if there was a plaque,
yeah.
I think I don't know. It's off the cuff. I'd say I think I hadn't planned for this.
And that's like Spike Milligan. Kite me grab me broocher. I told you I was sick is on his tombstone.
I think that's WGW. That's somebody else. It's not Spike Milligan. Maybe it is.
Somebody else. He wrote it. I think
somebody famous. It might be W.C. Fields.
So Spike could have stolen it from W.C. Fields, but I'm pretty sure Spike said it in Irish.
Sorry, I ruined the first rule of these conversations, which is don't contradict your host.
I have to go and check that now, and I'll put it under the video. I'll say, by the way, I was right.
By the way, I was right. That's fine.
Or Clem was right. I don't mind.
It would be the other way around, I'm sure.
I will yield to you if you're correct. I'll definitely let you know either way. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and definitely going to come back again and have some more conversations with you, because it's been so wide ranging. There's so much to talk about.
I'm just a big head.
Well, you're brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate that.
Ciao, ciao.